What's good, family? It's your boy Old Soul J, and I'm back with another video. Now in this video I want to do a reaction. It's overdue for me to do a reaction on this channel. I want to react to a video. I'll recommend a video that was on my YouTube. I watched some of it, and as I'm watching it, I'm like, this would be a great video to react to, because I've been thinking about reacting to videos, and I'm like, this would be a great video to react to. Let me stop watching this. Let me pull the camera out. Let's make a banger.
Look, we have...
Alright, family, I felt like this would be a great video to react to. Now, shout out to, you see the person here, it says Thoth Anunnaki. Thoth Anunnaki posted this. Let's react to it. Joe Rogan goes down the Anunnaki rabbit hole.
Look, we have 46 chromosomes, right?
Right.
What happens
is at 48.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They discovered that chromosome number 2 was taken out. They call it an artificial mutation. They mean geneticists. Fused together and 2 telomere caps put on. 1 telomere cap on each side. Who in the world took chromosome number 2 out, fused it together, and put telomere caps on it? And they say that it happened as an estimated 200,000 years ago, right at the time that the Sumerian tablets say they decided to make mankind to do the labor.
Now look, this is so perfect for me to do a reaction on, because if you've seen my last video, which, like I said, I believe it's my best video yet, I talk about the connection between Hinduism, Buddhism, and spirituality. But I also briefly mentioned the Anunnaki in that video, and I briefly mentioned the Sumerian tablets. And right after I recorded that video, which I recorded today, I may have released it before you see this video, but I recorded that video earlier today. And right after I record that video, I find this video. And remember, I said in that video, the Sumerian tablets, they consider it a religion, but or a religion that people used to practice, but it's the oldest known religion to man, and it's not practiced anymore. I'm just throwing that in there as we watch.
There's no coincidence that the tablets are aligning with modern science, and this means that
the tablets are aligning with modern science. That should tell you something about the human evolution. As we grow, as we evolve, and we learn more scientifically, there's certain things that people have been talking about that's starting to align. And what is science? Science is the way of something. It's breaking down how something works or how something came to be. It's our understanding of it. And of course, but there's already things above. That's why we're able to evolve, because all we're doing is climbing the unlimited levels of understanding. Man, it's so funny, because I've said in my past videos in the past, a lot of science is starting to align with what people talk about in spirituality. But let's continue.
this means that a couple things. The first thing, it means that we were genetically modified. The second thing that it means is the telomere caps limit our lifespan to about 120 years max. Look, we have 46 chromosomes, right?
Right.
And this means that a couple things. The first thing, it means that we were genetically modified. The second thing that it means is the telomere caps limit our lifespan to about 120 years max, according to Harvard scientists. Now, in the Bible, what does it say? It says that my seed shall not abide in man forever. His years shall be 120. That was taken from the Sumerian tablets, even further back than that.
I also said in both of my presentation videos, if you've seen in my videos, that the hard truth is the Bible, they take, a lot of it is taken from old religions and scriptures, text, all types of things from the past. I never mentioned them taking anything from the Sumerian tablets. I never did. Just more fuel to the fire, I guess you could say.
Years before the Bible was written, when Yahweh, aka Enlil, shows back up, sees the human beings building a tower into the heavens, copying a tower that they themselves had built, it pissed him off, and he said, wherever their hearts decide to do, they shall achieve it. My seed shall not abide in man, his years shall be 120. And then he did a genetic modification at that point, I believe, with the telomeres, and he spread mankind out around the planet, and he confused their languages. He had us speaking different languages, so we couldn't collaborate. Now we're in competition, no collaboration, divide and conquer.
And there's the Tower of Babel.
That's it. That's it, man.
So it was all done just to keep us from rising.
Yes. We were advancing too fast, and he had to slow us down. If we shorten their lifespan, then they won't have enough time. By the time they realize who they are and what power they have, they'll be dead. And see, that's what's happened to us.
So the craziest version of this story is that they genetically engineered us out of lower primates and put us here to mine gold.
Right.
And then established different types of civilizations and taught us how to build things, taught us all these different things. And enough time has passed that we've kind of forgotten. Enough time has passed. That's the wackiest version of it, right?
Right. That's the bare bones minimum.
Yeah, the wackiest versions that they made us, which is we've talked about this a couple of times, but how bizarre it is that human beings have this incredible fascination for gold. We're fascinated with gold.
Yeah.
This fascination with gold is really weird. Like, why back when it was basically useless? You couldn't make a knife out of it.
Right.
You couldn't, like, it didn't make sense that this would be so valuable. Just because it's rare, you're barely alive,
You know what I like about Joe Rogan? He's very open-minded. That's something I'll talk about a lot, too, is that people just need to be open-minded. And that doesn't mean that everything that you hear, you believe. Joe Rogan is one of these people where he doesn't necessarily believe everything. And that's why it's such a great thing that his podcast is so big. He always speaks from taking things from a grain of salt, but he always critically thinks and considers things. That's what they don't want you to do. Because when you do that as a human being, you learn things, you discover things, right? But you always take things with a grain of salt. But that's what I like about Joe Rogan. He's unbiased. He doesn't let his belief systems dictate what he's able to comprehend, to hear, to learn.
We're going back to full-on hunter and gatherer, our ancestors with spears and stone chipped, and then after that, gold emerges, and it stays.
Yeah.
It stays forever. Yeah. Now, when you read Zecharia Sitchin's book, he talks about this in the 1970s. His description of it was that they needed to suspend gold particles in the atmosphere because their atmosphere was being destroyed.
Right.
Then you move to like somewhere around the 2000s when climate scientists start proposing this idea of suspending reflective particles in the atmosphere.
Right.
And then when you realize the unique properties of gold, how unusual it is in terms of like a building material, you can coat things. The reason why things are like...
Did y'all catch what he just said? Did y'all just catch what he just said?
The 2000s when climate scientists start proposing this idea of...
Climate scientists started proposing the same idea that the story of the Anunnaki, of why they made humans to mine gold. The same idea, to use the particles to help the environment. Because they discovered, as we evolved, the use of it, the benefit of it. But at a time, there was a time where we wasn't evolved enough to understand how that could affect the environment and the use of it. So to the person, you don't know what you don't know. So to a person who doesn't understand that, they may be like, that doesn't make sense. Why would they be doing blah, blah, blah? I'm just saying. You got to put things into perspective here, guys.
Named reflective particles in the atmosphere.
Right.
And then when you realize the unique properties of gold, how unusual it is in terms of like a building material, you can coat things. The reason why things are like coated in gold, silver plated, gold plated rather, you can take a tiny piece of gold and cover an enormous area with it. It's a strange metal.
Yeah.
Like really weird. And what, the supposed story is, it's very common on Earth, very rare on Nibiru.
Right. Yeah, that's the story. And then when I started looking into this gold thing myself, and here's what I came up with. So when you start analyzing the text, you discover that there was an encampment in a place called South Africa at Adam's Calendar. Okay. Now, at Adam's Calendar, there's actually the very first gold mines discovered. They're dating them back to about 200,000 years ago. And that's incredible because there's a building there that looks like a worn down structure. Now, in the tablets, it talks about the fact that the Igigi, who were the working class Anunnaki beings who were cleaning out the Euphrates and Tigris River so they can create irrigation and, create a bustling civilization. Also, they were doing the actual construction themselves. No people needed, just them working. They were like the construction workers, and Anu and Enki and Enlil, these leader gods, were like, the foremen, the master architects and so forth, right? The boss. So these people were working, but they weren't supposed to be enslaved. They were volunteers. They got tired of doing the work, according to them, for about 250,000 years of labor on Earth, and also, according to them, on Mars. This is in the text. They call it Lamu. And so they decided to go to war against Enki and Enlil and Anu because their demands had not been met. So they went to meet them in the Epic of Atrahasis. Go to Adam's Calendar. They go to that same structure that was discovered where that gold mine is located. I was like, holy crap, there is some link here to gold. Specifically, exactly, I don't know. But I know if you're an advanced civilization, you need gold. And the people that you have working it for you probably think, it's to adorn or to adorn yourself or in recognition of the gods. So they'll wear it and they'll utilize it, but not for technology. But what's crazy is they go to war, they get ready to go to battle, and then Enki says, I have an idea that will stop this war. There's an existing being on this planet. Existing, not something that doesn't exist, existing. We can add our essence to it, but a slain god. So they're talking about taking the DNA or genetics from one of themselves and mixing it with the DNA of the hominid that was here. It's not specified whether it was, an ape man or anything, but they don't specify in the tablets. But to create a worker being, and they began to do this genetic modification, probably disconnecting some of our DNA, making genetic modification to us to get us to take orders from them. They inserted something called a worship gene, which was just discovered recently, that human beings have a gene inside of them that can be turned on and turned off. It can be turned off in a laboratory setting. It can also be turned off with a magnetic field around your head. And when it's off, you don't want to worship anything outside of yourself. You look inside, and when it's on, you look to get something from the outside. So this is incredible.
That is incredible. That's incredible. I did not know that. But that makes so much sense. See, science, I always spoke how science and spirituality and consciousness intertwine with each other. What he said was like a scientific way of what I'd be saying about sometimes the way a person acts and reacts and just is as a being is based on their consciousness level. He's breaking it in a sense of the actual, what is actually going on in your DNA when a person, in this instance, worships the inner self as opposed to worshiping something external.
That human beings have a gene inside of them that can be turned on and turned off. It can be turned off in a laboratory setting. It can also be turned off with a magnetic field around your head. And when it's off, you don't want to worship anything else.
Magnetic field around your head. Crown chakra. Your third eye. And I just made a video talking about how spirituality aligns with Buddhism and Hinduism. And now, as you can see here, it's also aligning with science. It's also aligning with the Sumerian tablets. What is this telling you guys? Let's continue.
Yourself, you look inside, and when it's on, you look to get something from the outside. So this is incredible. And so they made us worship people.
Gene inside of us to make us worship them. Wow, right. Genius.
It's incredible, because then you're not a slave anymore. You're doing this for the honor of the gods.
And for people who think all this talk is really crazy, I want to put into perspective that we talked about this the other day, that during which war was it where the Soviet Union was experimenting? It was scientists in the Soviet Union, correct? They're experimenting with creating a chimpanzee human being hybrid that they would probably send to war.
Yeah.
So instead of having regular people, we would make this monster, this freak, ape man, and send him to war and have him crush the enemies.
Yeah.
So how crazy is that?
But you see how we think the same way? This is why it wouldn't even be that crazy. It wouldn't be so far out there that this is possible. Because if we were advanced enough, human beings would do the same thing. But now that just comes down to the question if you believe there are actually more advanced civilizations outside of Earth.
You know how strong chimps are. I got an idea. Let's turn a chimp human, and that way if he dies, who gives a fuck?
Right.
We made him. Get him to go to work for us.
Yeah.
And now if you're a supremely enlightened being, wouldn't you think of human beings with all of our folly and all of our chaos and all of our war and bullshit and the internet and disinformation and misinformation, wouldn't you think of us kind of the same way we would think about that chimp hybrid thing? Yeah.
Yo, Joe Rogan is so intelligent, because that goes along the lines exactly what people would say about certain consciousness levels, and you have to recognize that beings on a certain consciousness level will look at you how we look at ants, or for like what he's saying, and in this instance like a chimpanzee, because of our development or the consciousness state that we're on. Think about it. If an enlightened super millions, hundreds of thousands, whatever years advanced than a human being, if they're so much advanced, not like if they're that advanced in technology, they're obviously more advanced in other ways as well. If they're that much advanced consciously and they come across a person like you or me, they would look at us how we look at monkeys. And that's why in spirituality and things of that nature and compassionate people, not even just spiritual people, but you see that it's a common thing that spiritual people care about animals and nature and things of that nature. Because how would you feel if somebody who was consciously or a species that was just so much more consciously more advanced than you, how would you feel if they decided to put you in a zoo and have other species come look at you? The kids would just think, oh, look at that ape, it looks cool. It looks different than me, that's interesting. You ain't gonna be thinking about how you feel and how you're being taken away from your natural habitat. Let's think about this here, family. And like I said, I'm not saying any of this is true or it's not true. Sometimes you have to give your mind space to actually critically think about something before you just say, this can't be true or this is not true. You can't say that and you don't know anything about it, at least without learning from it first, because then you're coming from a space that is ingrained in your mind. You're coming from a indoctrinated area in your brain. But let's continue.
Information, misinformation. Wouldn't you think of us kind of the same way we would think about that chimp hybrid thing? Yeah. If I was I was the president of Russia, I want my cousins to go to war?
No.
Or I want to send this freak that I made in a lab?
Yeah, and what's interesting, I'm glad you said made in a lab. They had talked briefly in that text about fashioning people. In other words, almost
How did
like...
they say it?
They said the word fashioning. Fashioning a being.
What was do you remember the actual quote?
I would have to look it up, the actual quote.
But they describe it as fashion.
Fashion, because they said even the lamb hadn't been fashioned yet, so they had fashioned lambs. So they fashioned, and it's also in the Epic of Gilgamesh, they fashioned the friend that Gilgamesh went on the journey with. He wasn't born from a woman's womb. They created him. They created him an artificial being to go on this journey in the Epic of Gilgamesh. So they use that phrase several times in the tablets. But they said, no, wait. So it was almost like that's not a good idea, because in some ways it seems as if they had known that the idea of making these too many artificially created people wouldn't be a good idea. Now, they didn't go deeper than that, but you can see where we are today with AI and everything else and these robots that are coming.
I want y'all to look at this. If our current civilization as humans, we're at a place where we can make this, right? These robots here, you see how quickly AI is developing. Is it so far out there that there are advanced civilizations that have the technology and science to create something like us, or at least these bodies? Is it? I don't think it is. Let's continue.
Do something about that. But they decided to take a biological being and genetically modify and program that to do the work, and that's exactly what they did.
Well, if they really knew what we would be capable of and that we would be illogical, overpopulation would be a gigantic issue. And in many parts, it's not really that big of an issue here, except for in cities. But in many parts of the world, it's the whole country. Yeah. The whole country is New York City, which is just fucking bonkers. Yeah. And you got to wonder, that's actually not true. It's not even that bad, even in China. China has a lot of open space. But when you're in those cities, they are massive. And they are filled with people. Yeah. And that is probably what you'd imagine a higher being would do if it was like us, like kind of illogical and kind of a little bit reckless and has a little bit too much technology for the average person that didn't develop the technology, but all of a sudden you got some 85 IQ dope who has access to all the things that all these geniuses have created. You could figure, we talked to Michio Kaku, he built a nuclear reactor in his house when he was a kid.
I heard about that. It was crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
That's so crazy. But there's a lot of different stuff that you can do and have access to technology that is beyond anything you would ever be able to invent with your own mind. But because we share things across the board, you would imagine that if you were an enlightened being from another planet that's 1,000,000 years more advanced than us, you'd go, I see where this one's going. You have that cousin who's an alcoholic and then he wins the lottery, like, oh shit, Derek just won the lottery. Yeah. This is going to be crazy. Yeah. Derek's got $200 million. Right. It's going to be fucking insane.
It's crazy. And they knew they were going outside their own guidelines and their own laws, their parameters, because they made a statement in the text. They said the creator of all was going to punish them, or they would have to answer to the creator of all for what they did here.
Did y'all catch that? This is what was said in the Sumerian text. The creator of all was going to punish us. That aligns so well with what I say. I've said in one of my videos before. I was like, look, just because I say there's higher dimensions and you have a higher self doesn't mean that I'm saying that God is not real. And I've also said how God, the word God, is just a title. And how there could be multiple gods. And I said there is a creator of all, so to speak, right? But I said, even though there's a creator of all, what makes you think? I actually said this pretty recently. What makes you think that the creator of all would only create you? You think a creator of all with all its power, that is everything, and can do whatever it truly wants, it would only create you and some animals and put you on Earth. When the universe is so grand and so big, we don't even know a small fraction of it. We only know a small fraction of it. Use the sense that God, the creator of all, gave you. Where it comes from is irrelevant. You have sense. And that's why I said, we're on one level. So wherever the creator of all is at, may it be the highest level. There's levels of people, beings, civilizations, dimensions, possibilities, existence beyond human comprehension. And science is starting to catch up with this. The same thing that past civilizations already knew. How? I'm not sure. Some of these past civilizations knew something that our current generation of people just don't. But we're getting back to it.
That lets you know they weren't really gods. They knew themselves that they weren't the creator of the universe, but that they masqueraded as gods on this planet.
Just like we did when different versions of human civilization would find primitive tribes, like the cargo tribe,
cults.
the cargo cult that you talked about in your documentary. That is so fascinating that during World War II, planes landed on these remote places, and these people built
Look at that. These people seen humans in airplanes, and because it was so much more advanced, they worshipped us. I've heard somebody say actually Allah was actually an extraterrestrial, and people created a religion around it because some extraterrestrials are so advanced that if you've seen one, you would think it's God. Because even their technology is so advanced that it's almost like they have superpowers. It's something beyond your comprehension. It's something you've never even seen before. If an extraterrestrial that is 1,000,000 years advanced than human, and than a human with extraterrestrial with power or technology from their civilization, you would think they're God. And it's so funny how the whole perception, or they say that heaven is in the sky and gods come from the sky, and people have seen UFOs in the sky. Now, am I saying God is extraterrestrial? No, I'm not saying that. If you really listen to what I'm saying, that's not what I'm saying. But am I saying that some people may have seen extraterrestrials in the past and perceive them to be gods? That's very possible. It's actually very likely.
Planes to show what the thing was that came to visit them that they
Look
thought
at
was
them.
God.
USA painted on their chest. It's actually really funny. Marching together so seriously. They created a cult and started worshiping us because our people were more advanced than them.
Wild.
Do you think that if the Anunnaki are real, and if Nibiru really exists, and there's another planet with highly intelligent beings that are far more advanced than us, if that's the case, do you think there's more advanced and more, just like we are to chimpanzees, they are to us, and then another race is to them, and then it just keeps going on and on forever until you're God?
Absolutely. I believe there's levels to the game, just like there's levels in terms of how we live on this planet.
Isn't that what I just said? I basically just said that.
We have the first world, second world.
And remember, I told y'all, I said I watched part of this video. I only watched the first half, so I didn't even know he was going to say that.
World just here on Earth. Now magnify that as a fractal, as the universe as a whole. You have civilizations that are 1 million, 2 million, maybe even 1 billion years ahead, and every universe every civilization progressing within the universe at a specific rate. So you can have beings that have already maybe even shed their corporeal bodies and only exist as beings of energetic light, and then you have everything all the way back down to
the light body. I've hinted at that very, very, very. I haven't really spoken about that on here. But I've very briefly hinted at that while I was speaking. But that's simply because I'm not ready to talk about that yet. But that's another level of things. The light body. You hear what he listen to what he's saying. He just said it. Oh, the video's basically over. Just listen to that. Before we clip this off, just listen to that.
Within the universe at a specific rate. So you can have beings that have already maybe even shed their corporeal bodies and only exist as beings of energetic light. And then you have everything all the way back down towards us.
So
I forgot to switch back. Oh no, I didn't just record this whole video and not switch back. Oh my god, I forgot to switch. Alright family, I forgot to switch my screen. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take imagery and clips and things of that nature and put it in the video, so you're not just looking at me look at a screen, but everything that is important about the video is being said, right? Billy Carson and Joe Rogan. I'm gonna show some clips and stuff, so it's just something on the screen, but I completely forgot to switch the screen to share the screen so y'all can see what I was watching. And I'm not about to react to that again, because then it doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna remember to do that for my next reaction video, which I'm about to record right now. I'm human, man. We make mistakes. But yeah, family, regardless, the information was powerful in that video. The information was deep in that video. I hope y'all enjoyed. I hope you got some good insight from this video. And yeah, stay tuned for the next one. I'll be sure to show the screen in that one. But that's all I gotta say for today, y'all. Make sure y'all like and subscribe. I'm out.